Welcome to the Barbell Strikes Back. I'm James McDermott, and Miguel Porter is here with me again, and we are live. And this time, we're going to be talking all about training in the heat. But before we do that, Miguel, we took a week off. We double booked our podcast a few weeks ago. How have you been on the break?
Good, good. I guess the catalyst for today's topic was my trip last week. I was in DC for a long weekend and it was very hot over there. So, yeah.
Yep, it was hot all over the country, massive heat wave. I was in Pittsburgh while you were in DC, and at some point we were both in DC at the same time, so that's cool.
Oh, really?
Uh, yeah, because I flew into the airport there.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I'm not like I was in DC. I was at the airport in DC, but in Pittsburgh it was awful with the heat. I was there for the USA Weightlifting National Championships week, doing my national referee testing, and I'll announce on this podcast I passed. So I'm now a
Nice, nice.
USA Weightlifting National Referee. Yeah, that's awesome. But I was not happy about having to wear a suit for the first time in 7 years during a heat wave, you know? And I knew it was going to be bad that Tuesday, June 17th or June 18th, when at 5:30 a.m. I'm waiting for my Uber outside and it was already gross and muggy, and the last thing I wanted to be was in a suit and not having air conditioning. So definitely felt your pain over there in Pittsburgh.
Right. Yeah, it was similar in DC. I mean, I think the days that I was there, the highs were 95, 95, 98, 95, with a humidity level. I don't even know what percentage, but essentially humidity was enough that as soon as you stepped outside, you are already sweating.
Yes.
Um, and very early in the morning as well, which really caught me off guard. Uh, Leaving the house at 8 a.m. and it already touching 90 degrees and sun right up in the sky. It was something for sure.
As I get older, I have a list of things that you know, all right, I never need to do that again, or this is my least favorite thing, right? And I was thinking about this. I think that taking a shower and immediately feeling like you need another shower because of how hot and gross it is one of my least favorite life things. Like if
Right.
I'm making a list and I get up to the pearly gates, I'm going to show it to you all my, like, I've got some grievances, like some things that like I think we should tweak. That would be one of them. If we could just maybe not do that. That's one of my least favorite things.
Yeah.
Along with like, all right, I'll eat pancakes and stuff, but if I get the syrup all over my hands and whatnot, the day is ruined.
Right.
I hate that feeling. I don't know. Do you have any other weird life pet peeves like that?
Yeah, no, I'm similar with the showering and like getting ready for something. And as you're putting on your clothes, like you're already sweating through the clothes that you're putting on. Um,
Let's
yeah,
cancel our
not
plans.
not a fan. Yeah, no, not
Yeah,
great.
the concert. Let's move it to another day. Because you're gonna go. You go out, even if it's like an evening activity, right? All right, you're gonna go out for dinner with friends or go see a movie. You get ready, you get dressed, you go out. It's gross, and you're like, I'm gonna have to take another shower in 3 hours when I get back. Like
Yeah,
because I'm not going to bed like this, and it's only going to get worse.
yeah,
So yes, the heat, as we will discuss, can be your enemy, but it's not always the villain. There are good things, of course, that come with heat. But the article we're going to look at is a CrossFit Journal article. I'll pull it up here if I can get my screen sharing down right. So I have discovered something. I think that when I do, like right now, you can see I'm moving around in real time. It's not glitchy or anything,
hmm
and you're not glitchy either. I think there's something that goes on with this StreamYard when I share the screen and then come off a share screen that it starts to get choppy like that. I'm not
ah,
sure.
interesting.
So if after I unshare the screen, if we notice something like that, I think that's it. And I don't know. look into it. It might just be like an internet connection thing.
Hmm.
But let me share the screen. It's recommending I share with 2 monitors. Well, that would be nice. We only have one. Okay. So we're here. Training in the Heat, article written by Bill Starr, and it was published to the CrossFit Journal on May 1st, 2018. Bill Starr is a legendary figure in strength and conditioning and strength sports. If I scroll down to the article here, we'll see a picture of Bill. And no, what? I thought there was a picture of Bill Starr here.
I believe there was.
Yeah, what is that? All right, yeah, courtesy image. Oh, no, that's not it. Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah, the
odd.
about the author.
Yeah, well, here's about him. We'll have to pull up a picture later, but just about Bill Starr, I'll read it real quick. Coached at the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City, the 1970 Olympic weightlifting World Championships in Columbus, Ohio. That's pretty cool that the World Championships were in Columbus. Can you imagine that, Miguel?
Yeah,
If we were able
yeah.
to
I
drive
wonder
over
what
there.
the venue looked like.
Yeah, yeah, because I don't even know when that convention center was like built or anything. This is far enough, in the past that it could have been built after, for
Yeah,
all we know.
for sure.
The 1975 World Powerlifting Championships in Birmingham, England, and he was selected as the head coach of the 1969 team that competed in the Tournament of Americas in Mayaquez, Puerto Rico, where the United States won the team title. Hey, go USA! Making him the first active lifter to be the head coach of an international Olympic weightlifting team. That's pretty cool. And Starr is the author of the books The Strongest Shall Survive, Strength Training for Football, and Defying Gravity, which can be found at the Asgard Company bookstore. I don't have those books. That was probably on a wish list many, many years ago, but this just reminds me I should probably buy those. At least Defying Gravity would be cool. I'm assuming
Hmm.
that's about weightlifting.
I think
So
I've
yes,
heard of the strongest shall survive before.
you've heard of that one?
Yeah,
Yeah, that I'm from what it says, that's probably going to be a more football orientated one. But I
yeah,
mean, that doesn't mean it's not worth picking up. I have to pick both of them up. Some of those really old weightlifting books are cool to read because even though we do a lot of similar stuff, sometimes just over the years things get forgotten about,
right.
and you're like, oh, yes, I should do isometric training, or I should do this stretch, or I should do high pulls maybe this way. It's like high pull is a great example. I have another book here that is pretty old, and they explain doing the high pull way differently than we do the high pull now because of bar body contact and the way that we're trying to have it transfer into our lifts. But that doesn't mean that maybe we shouldn't do it that other way where they weren't really focusing on contact and it's just more of an upper body development exercise.
Yeah,
So yeah, very cool things to learn. Maybe we'll have to get that book and do a little book review, Defying Gravity.
yeah.
That'd be fun. So that is Bill Starr, and we will by the end of this find a picture of him because I feel like we should.
I think it's
But,
in the PDF version.
oh, really? Okay, hold on.
Yeah,
Let's scroll back down. Hey, there's Ben Smith. No, that's not Ben Smith. Dan Bailey.
Dan
Dan Bailey.
Bailey.
My bad. I Dan Bailey used to be like in the conversation all the time, and now sometimes when I see him, I don't remember who that is.
Yeah, it's crazy how just a couple years kind of changed the whole outlook or faces of a sport, really.
Yeah. And this is pretty timely that we had a heat wave and we're going to be taking a look at this article here and talking about training in the heat. The CrossFit Games is moving to Texas, and one of the big things that they've been talking about is the heat down there, that it's going to be pretty intense. So
Right. And I mean, we had a couple people succumb to the heat when they were in California, and there have even been complaints when it was in Madison, Wisconsin, um,
yeah,
for athletes and spectators for just how hot the fields get. And yeah, to go to a place that's going to be much hotter, we got to see how this first year goes.
Yeah, and they have that outdoor venue. And the stuff we're going to talk about today is not just for athletes, but also if you're just out and about, you're at a family function, you're at a sporting event like the CrossFit Games, you still need to take care of yourself because you
Yeah.
can experience some of these heat related illnesses and really hurt yourself, even if you're not doing anything physically exerting. So here's Bill Starr, very strong man. And the cool thing about guys from this era is that they used to do so many different sports. If you saw in the bio or heard in the bio when I was reading it, he was, involved in powerlifting and also in Olympic weightlifting. And I'm sure he did strongman type events. And I'm definitely sure he also bodybuilded,
Yeah.
because that was like a part of the program for a lot of these guys. And we try to do that a little bit now on just adding in those types of things in our training throughout the year. And you can see he's absolutely jacked. I
Yeah.
don't know, Miguel. Weightlifters today don't really look like that, right?
Yeah, I guess it's what is optimal now. Um, like we said, at the earlier age, they were kind of bodybuilding was more of a natural piece of what everyone did. I feel like the body types very much looked the same in that era, like across different weight classes. Everyone kind of had the same look about them because the training was kind of similar. And I
Yeah.
think now we've kind of gotten more to an individualized type of training across. You can look at one weight class and all the athletes could look completely different from one another because it's what's optimal for them and using your body to its best ability in the way that works for you. So, some people hold on to weight different, they put it in different spots, and, you know,
You got those weightlifting power bellies.
right.
It is different. Like you can't judge two people and be like, oh, that person weighs less, that person weighs more. It it always surprises me whenever I'm working at the weigh-ins at some weightlifting events. And let's say I'm weighing in the guys that are like 81 or 89 or something like that. And that's typically where I hover around. Right now I'm in the mid 81 kilo weight class. So I weigh like 77, 78 most days. But some of these juniors would hop on the scale and they're huge. Like like they're like big people, all this muscle stuff like that, and they hop on. I'm like, how do we weigh the same?
Yeah.
Like or how like how are you as light as I am, or sometimes how am I as heavy as you are? Like even though you're like a foot taller than I am, and you got all this muscle and stuff, and then it always just puts me down a spiral thinking about my body weight in it maybe in an unhealthy way. I'm like I shouldn't weigh as much as you, this big kid. I
Right.
don't understand it. And I'm like, where am I holding this weight? Like I don't understand it. Like
Yeah.
okay, there's a little bit of padding here in the midsection, but I think most people when they look at me, they look and they see maybe a smaller person, right?
Mhm.
Yet some of these other kids, if you were to guess who weighs more, you're like, oh, clearly that big kid that James is standing to weighs more. But I've had many instances where no, we weigh the same, or I weigh more than them. You
Right.
know, maybe my bones are just really dense. I'm big boned. I don't get it. It's one of those. It's one of those weird things.
Yeah.
So that is Bill Starr. I think I don't know. I think it's really cool to be a multi-sport athlete and to be able to perform at a high level, even if it's just for yourself, than just to kind of specialize and be really, really good at one thing. I don't know. What do you think? Would you prefer to be a specialist, or is it, if you could, would you dabble in powerlifting, maybe a little more CrossFit, maybe some other types of stuff?
Well, I think that's maybe what we're losing a bit in CrossFit. I think CrossFit is the sport where you go to because you're good or you have interest in a little bit of everything. Um, Throughout middle school and high school, I played a few different sports really just to try them out. I did, like low level soccer in middle school, did a couple of years of football, track and field, all different seasons, and volleyball as well. Really just to try sports out. And yeah, I think that's the best way to do it. You pick up so much just in the way that you move based on different sports.
You learn
Um,
to be an athlete.
right. Not just like in conditioning and training, but specific like lateral movement or, moving around a cone, agility, and just different skills that you wouldn't necessarily pick up if you stuck with one sport.
Yeah, that's why so many youth and juniors are encouraged to do that, and they definitely do. If they have a good support team around them, they'll play football, they'll do basketball, soccer, all these things. I think it's definitely something, like you said, it's missing at, I think, our level, like your age group, being out of college, being in the professional world. Okay, how many things can you really do, right?
Right.
You can do your weightlifting training, but you still have a job and other responsibilities. People have family, kids, but it almost seems like it would be like a secret little advantage if you did have the time to dedicate or just planned your year out through seasons where
Hmm.
you're going to be training for these types of weightlifting meets. Then weightlifting kind of takes more of a supplemental route, and you're training for, let's say, powerlifting or strongman, and then that kind of like segues into CrossFit, and you're doing the open, and then you have a little bit of downtime, and then you're doing more of like just general fitness and bodybuilding and joint health and maybe some gymnastics. Like it does seem like it could potentially be, if done the right way over the long term, like a secret weapon, if you
Yeah,
will,
definitely.
as opposed to just being like, all right, I'm just going to snatch and clean and jerk year round, and just like kind of like then it kind of feels like you're butting your head against a wall
Yeah.
constantly, because those plateaus come, injuries come, you have to have a way to work around them. And we do have that knowledge that when some of these weightlifters were injured, when maybe they were doing more of a specialist type of route, then they also started just to focus on the slow lifts more, bench, squat, deadlift, and for high reps, more of a muscle building type of thing. So it is out there. I think it's a time thing.
Yeah, it's hard to even like a rec league, if you're adult wanting to do like somewhat organized basketball or softball or something, a lot of those again have to work around work schedules. So, a lot of those games are late into the night and all that. So, yeah, it's tough,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, it's not easy. We've been trying to do that a little bit. We've talked about this, the way our year is kind of broken up. We of course just do a lot of weightlifting, but then I try to give you guys breaks when I can of non-weightlifting stuff. And I don't do you feel like that's been helping? Not only just physically, joint health, muscle development, recovery from the weightlifting stuff. Because it's funny, like the thing you love is the thing that hurts you
right.
sometimes. And we love weightlifting, but sometimes we just need to be like, it's not you weightlifting, it's me. I need to take a break. Um, and we try to sprinkle in plyometrics and all that stuff and some powerlifting. Uh, does that give you feel enough of a physical break, but also like a mental break from what we're doing?
Definitely. And like you said, the plateaus come no matter how intense you're going with weightlifting. If you're going all throughout the year, you're still going to have those moments where either you're not progressing or it feels like you're not progressing. And if you're doing something every day, it's really going to feel like you're not progressing in the way that you'd like. So it's nice to take a little break, focus on some other things, still do the movements if you'd like to, but focus on some other things. And when you come back, if you're back where you were before, that's okay. Or you might even feel better and continue to get better from there.
Yeah. And I have, that's one of my main reasonings for doing it. And also to kind of piggyback on that, I've noticed that once we do that, sometimes the bad habits that have been developing go away,
Hmm.
both from me and for you. So let's say, if there's been some kind of like a nagging injury or a technical thing that we just can't shake because we're trying to go heavy because we're peaking for a meet, all these things, it's you can't correct it in the moment, even though we try and we add supplemental exercises or things like that. I'll find that once we go through like our powerlifting cycle or strength cycle in the fall, when we do start lifting again in the new year, a lot of the stuff that maybe I was telling you to do over and over again to fix, they're gone. Like
Right.
it's like your brain has had a chance to forget about it. You have to figure out how to snatch again. And of course, you're going to try to do it the right way. So then we start at a new, fresh base.
Yeah.
And for me, too, just from taking a break from seeing you guys snatch and clean jerk. Now, when we do start again, I feel like I have fresher eyes as a coach. Does that make sense? Like, it, Greg Glassman had the quote, don't let yourself get used to the athlete's shitty movement. And that can certainly happen. You get used to the flaws you're seeing because you're just with it every single day. And that might become, oh, well, that's just the way Miguel does that.
Right.
It doesn't mean that's the right way to do it, but you just kind of lay down your sword and you're like, well, we've tried 500 times to fix it. He either won't listen, he won't try, or it's just not happening for whatever reason. I don't have the right cues. I'm not seeing it in the right light. And we both kind of get complacent with it. That can happen on the coaching side too. Like coaches are human and we're in this dynamic thing together. And sometimes we both just need a break, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
So you start to see things in a different way. And then it might be, oh, maybe you just say it off the cusp, Miguel, do this. And you're like, oh, that you said it the right way this time, you
Hmm.
know? Or I was in a position now to receive it because I'm also not just so tired,
Yeah.
you know, or so beat down or mentally stressed because the meets, like it's pretty exhausting around Arnold time and around States time. Just everything going into those meets. Those are our two big meets at the moment. And they take a lot of mental energy for all of us for those. So we need to chill.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's dive into this article here. Advice for the dog days of summer. I've not heard that term in a long time. The dog days. Um, got here on the football field. I think that's always amazing how these guys train out in the heat in the full gear and stuff like that. It's not like you can take it off and you can't not wear the pads.
Yeah.
I've never played football. Have you played football?
Yeah. So I played a couple years. And as you get further into it, like the beginning of this article says, like originally this was published in August. Um, so early August to like mid August, depending on what level you're at, that's kind of like the preseason. And you start to do two-a-days. So this might be, depending on, again, different stages, it might be something you might be fully on the field for both sessions, but it could be like a morning cardio or weightlifting type of session. Um, Early in the morning, you go home for a couple hours and then you're right back. And maybe this time you're running plays. And it's really so that you can get, around 4 hours in one day of training. Um, but yeah, it's interesting because the morning, obviously, it's a little bit cooler, so you might avoid some of that, direct heat beating down on you when you're like running and just doing cardio all throughout the season. Um, but then the afternoon, maybe when you get there, either if you go, you know, 5 p.m. or like once the sun is starting to set, something like that, you're running plays, but you still feel that heat. And again, your total for the day, it's about 4 hours of training. Um,
That's a
and
lot.
you really, yeah, you really start to feel it. And it's August. It's as hot as it gets. So it really gets you.
Training multiple times a day is always something that um, it's sexy. It looks like it's what you want to do. You see professional athletes, whether they be for football, like you said, or even weightlifting and CrossFit, who they're exercising or training all throughout the day, right? Doing multiple workouts, and it seems like a glamorous lifestyle. And I think it's more of the intermediate athlete, or maybe that that segue between beginner to intermediate. You're kind of like a mix of both, where you're making gains, but possibly not at the speed that you want them to be, because everyone wants it now. Um, and then you think, okay, more is better. I
Yeah.
should do more training. And really, that's 99.999, add as many nines as you want percent, not the case of what someone needs to do. What they absolutely should do is have their quote 2-a-days or extra training be devoted towards nutrition, sleep, and recovery. And hydration factors into that with the nutrition part. But those are the things that aren't sexy that no one wants to do.
Right.
It's very hard to post your kitchen success on Instagram and get likes for it these days. So like, all right, I'll go in and I'll post more videos of me lifting or stuff like that. You see it all the time. Like Instagram is just like a minefield of just people overtraining and doing too much and wanting to spend time in the gym. And but what they also don't realize is the people that are doing double day stuff, they're very efficient with their training.
Yeah.
I'm sure you were too. If you were doing double days in football, you have a plan and you're getting right to it, and then you're getting out of there. I think people, for some reason, they kind of see like oh, I'm just going to hang out in the gym all day and shoot videos and be on my phone and text or do likes and stuff like that. It's like you just don't want to have a job.
Yeah.
Which I get it, but it's not as glamorous as it would seem. I think a lot of those athletes, especially on the weightlifting and potentially CrossFit side, would tell you it's very lonely. It's very isolating. You feel like you're a slave chained to the walls of the gym, and this is all you do. You actually don't have as many degrees of freedom as someone who's just going to come in and enjoy the process and do one day and go home and eat their meals and go to bed early.
Yeah.
But it is it's like a carrot at the end of the stick that you shouldn't chase. And a lot of beginner to intermediate athletes end up doing that when they don't want to do the work on the nutrition side of things. That's how you're going to make those gains come faster. I don't know. I don't know why I'm on this soapbox. It flashed in my head that maybe we should talk about this.
Yeah.
Have you seen people go down that route?
Yeah. I think that's a part of the natural kind of progression, especially if you got into CrossFit like me through watching the games. I think not that that is your goal, but you see that as the best way to train, like a games athlete. And you think, okay, I can do, let's say today's CrossFit class, we're building up to, something heavy in the snatch. Okay, so I get my weightlifting in here. After class, I'll do a long metcon or a chipper or something else. You always want to add in something else. You know that you have weaknesses, so you try to work on every single thing. But yeah, that's not exactly the way that that should go.
And two things on that. One, some people do get addicted to exercise. And that happens just because of maybe it makes you feel good and you're like, I need to keep feeling this. Or you have an already addictive personality and you're using exercise to help fight those other demons. You know, like, all right, maybe you were addicted to drugs or alcohol or smoking or even sugar and food. And now you've replaced one addiction with another. And of course, the exercise and the movement and stuff is the better choice, but it can still, of course, have diminishing returns.
Yeah.
Exercise and anything you do, no matter how good it is for you, can have diminishing returns for the most part. And then you also see people who start to try to train like a games athlete, and they end up really learning how to just overpace everything, and every workout is done suboptimal because they know they have another workout coming. If you knew that you had a spicy metcon coming up at 3, then you might go instead of 80% on your morning workouts, like 65%. because you're trying to like conserve all of your energy. And then you get
Right.
to that spicy Metcon and you're tired from the morning. So you also don't go as hard. And then you show up to the competition and you're like, why are people beating me? Well, it's because you never push the intensity part. And we know that intensity is that independent variable that's closely associated with adaptation. You're stunting your adaptation by doing too much versus if you just did that one Metcon and gave it everything you had that day and then went hard in the kitchen, you'd have better results.
Yeah.
And you'd be healthier in the long run too, with all the injuries that could pop up because you can still overtrain things just by doing CrossFit. You're just doing too much. All right. I was back on the soapbox there for a second. I'm having flashbacks because I've seen this happen a lot, and it's a disappointing thing to see because people are getting in their own way by thinking they have to do too much. And not for anything, there's also so many articles and other stuff that kind of gets in your way too. Let's say you're an athlete, you have a coach. Let's say I don't know. Let's say Miguel, you move to Cookeville, Tennessee, and Rich Froning sees you, and he's like, you know what, Miguel, you're going to be the next CrossFit Games champion. I see potential in you. You start training under him. He has you doing like your 1 or 2 assignments a day, but then you go home and maybe you're not working a full-time job or something like that, or you just have a lot of downtime, and you're on your phone reading articles, listening to videos, all these things that are now influencing you. And even if you have a really, really good coach, it kind of can start to work against you because you start to have these big ideas when you should just be focused on your training and listening to your
Right.
coach.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot now, a lot. There's just so many inputs. When Bill Starr was training, there were no other inputs other than his coach.
Yeah.
You're right. His coach was like, you need to do this assignment today, and then I want you to go eat dinner, and that was it. He wasn't on social media seeing the new flashy thing or some fitness challenge or this or that. What are your thoughts on that part of it? Like, there's so many things, so many hurdles in the way of a what's the word I want to use? An influential, not influential, easily influenced athlete. Is that what I want to say? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's because people don't like the answer of it depends. Like if someone is to ask you what is the best way for someone to train this, for someone to get a faster mile, for someone to, run a marathon by the end of summer, the training plan depends on each individual person. So what I mean by that is with social media, with podcasts, with all these YouTube channels, you might be training one way, and that might be the best training option for you. But if you're starting to follow all these other marathon runners, you have 5 separate people who are training 5 different ways. So you're always going to see something that they're doing that you're not, and you're going to feel as though you're missing out. Not looking at the fact that I'm doing this and they're not doing this. Maybe they could be missing out. It's always, I need to add in everything that I see, not exactly that what I'm doing is what's best for me at this time. It's, I need to be doing every single thing that I see.
And I've done that before when I first started strength training. Me and my friend Chris, we would, everybody wanted a big chest. So every time we discovered a new chest exercise, it got added to the program.
Yeah.
Until the point where we had like 50 million exercises of different types of bench push-up variations, and we were doing everything in the kitchen sink, because we also didn't know how to get rid of an exercise, or we're comfortable doing it because maybe you like that exercise, so we can't
Right.
get rid of that one. We like it, and it's with the social media now, a lot of what you see, and one of the pitfalls is that you're also seeing advanced techniques that aren't appropriate for you most of the time. And that's why you should talk to your coach about it. Like, oh, look at this flashy exercise. One, it might just be for novelty. or two, it's an exercise for a very specific person or purpose for a very specific person in their training age and whatever part of their competition that they're in. That doesn't mean you should be doing it. I mentioned this to Haley the other day. The pauses we've been doing on the jerk, and also all those jerk dip squats. I wouldn't want to program those too close to states or big important meet. Like you guys have a local meet that's coming up that we're going to train through, and you guys are advanced enough in your technique and your experience that you're not going to accidentally double dip on your jerk and get a red light, right?
Right.
But I would never ever, I probably wouldn't need to use that exercise with a beginner. But I also wouldn't use it with a beginner close to an important meet. Have them go out there and then just have a brain, fart and just dip and then do their jerk,
Yeah.
because that's how we've been doing it every single time they're doing jerks on their own. Or they associate when jerks get hard, this is what I do now.
Yeah.
So it's a very specific time and place, and you have to be careful with your exercise selection and when you do things. The closer we get to meets, a lot of those things fall off to the way. We're not doing high pulls. We're not doing this or that. We're just doing the main lifts. It's time to play football,
Yeah.
or baseball, basketball, whatever it is. All right, back to this. 2 days. That's when stuff starts to happen. You've played football. I've done flag football or touch football at the Baptist church in parking lot in Afton, New York, where I scored at least one touchdown, Miguel. I've
Nice.
scored at least one in my life. Doesn't matter what level you are. I feel like that's one of those things when you score a touchdown, man, very few things feel like that.
That is true. Yeah. No, that's fair.
Is it? I don't know. I think it's even different than a PR snatch or something. As far as like sports feelings, catching a pickup game touchdown, it definitely feels different, on its own level. There's something about it.
Definitely. Okay. Yeah.
All right. So where are we here in this? Well, so now we're not going to read the whole article. This is a 10-page article, and a lot of it just kind of talks about maybe his training at the time, things like
Yeah.
that. I definitely recommend reading the full article, but we're going to talk more about the heat stuff. So where are we going next here?
Yeah. So if you see right at the end of that last paragraph, extreme heat can be debilitating to any athlete, regardless of age, if he or she does not take proper precautions. And then, yeah, so if we just keep on going into that, there's a piece of it that talks about it gets into hydration, of course. And just for our athletes at our gym, as we get into these summer months, just dealing with heat, I know something that we say very often, regardless of the time of year, is if you shouldn't need a water break, or if you need a water break during the workout, it's probably already too late.
Yes, you can't. The hydration starts the day or days before,
Right.
To set you up for your event. So let's say we have, for example, our Saturday SmackDown event coming up on July 13th. You can't be chugging water that morning and think it's going to do a lot for you. It's going to make you feel like you're not thirsty, maybe that mouth feeling, but it takes time for all the cells in your body and all the different spots in your body that need it to get that hydration. And you have millions and millions and millions and millions of cells in your body. They all need water. Like everybody needs water. If you imagine each of those cells is like a person, they're all like, yes, I will have some of that. And when you're not hydrating properly, then imagine, if we had 50 people in the gym and we had 1 cup of water to give everybody. Everybody's just going to get a little bit, right? And that's not going to work, especially in the long term. Sorry it's taking so long to scroll down here. This is part of the slowing down of the screen sharing for this software here. So it might also be just I have an older computer and it's trying to keep up. So all right, continue.
Yeah, so we're just going into hydration here as a means to deal with this heat as we go on through the year. Um, if you see that one uh, paragraph there, it says two misconceptions uh, that get people in trouble when it comes to hydration is one, it takes a large amount of dehydration to bring on negative reactions, and two, you can depend on thirst to inform you when you're at risk. So obviously, those are the misconceptions. The reality is, it takes a surprisingly small amount of fluid loss, just 1%, for your body to become dehydrated. And you can't depend on your thirst to tell you what's happening. So if you're waiting to get more water when you're thirsty, it may already be too late. It's also, if you hear about, if you ever get lost while you're out like hiking or something, and some people, they end up dying from dehydration with water on them because they're trying to ration their water, when dehydration doesn't necessarily work like that. It really just goes. You don't really get the warning signs. You can't really ration, take a little bit of water here or there. It's really just something you have to build up over time. You can't just
Yeah.
take sips of water and think that that's going to be enough.
And you have to think too that your breathing and the temperature out there also factors into that. So like even if it's like cold out and you're lost in the woods, you can still get really dehydrated,
Yeah,
and end up hurting yourself, and you have water on you. And in that situation, I believe the advice is to kind of stop and stay put. A lot of people also die like 100 feet or not that far away from the main trail that they got lost from.
yeah,
And what happens is you start to walk to try to find your way out. And if you're not good at navigating, you actually just, like, for whatever inclination we have as human beings, start just doing a circle. So you'll just be in the same area, just kind of wandering around, exhausting yourself. And more than likely, they say just stay put, and hopefully people are on the way to get you,
yeah,
or you need to figure out how to like read the stars and navigate yourself out of there.
yeah. So
I
it
don't ever plan
continues
on putting
on.
myself in that situation because I would like to be in a position to admire nature from afar,
Yeah,
respectfully.
I'm with you there for
Yeah.
sure. It continues on, just saying that researchers have found that even a tiny shortage of water disrupts biochemistry of the body and can limit performance. And this is physical and mental, which I found really interesting. Um, so, water balance is the single most important variable in athletic performance. Besides affecting overall strength, dehydration causes the brain to shrink slightly, um, which in turn results in an impairing of the neuromuscular system, coordination, concentration, and thinking. So, not just strength, not just really the physical, but even if you're going for accuracy, if your technique is important, if you're trying to hit the same spot for a wall ball every time, that coordination and everything that you're trying to do, proprioception, is all going to be limited, and it's going to have a negative effect on that due
Yeah.
to, heat, water loss, the sweat, not hydrating properly. All of that will factor in.
It's like, it's like if you wouldn't want your car to run hot, and not have oil in it and not have all the other things it needs, and it's going to run a little rougher. Your body's a vehicle. You got to take care of it. You got to put the right fuels and lubricants and other stuff inside of it so it'll perform well. Especially, I mean, you just mentioned things like wall balls and stuff. For us in weightlifting, if you have to cut weight, that's going to affect you a lot too. And with such a technique driven, neurologically driven sport like weightlifting, your first lift is the snatch. There's already all that pressure on that first snatch, and you're now dehydrated and depleted. If you didn't do what you need to do to at least recover from your weight cut, that's tough.
Yeah.
And there were a few athletes at the national championships week who had to make weight. And during the heat wave, there was like a balcony in front of the weigh-in rooms. They would go outside and just pace back and forth and spit. in that hot heat. And that's rough. I
Yeah.
would not want to have to do that before having to go do a big lift, being all uncomfortable and getting sweaty and just feeling drained. When it's really hot out, you start to feel sleepy. Like I just need
Yeah,
to like
exactly. Yeah.
stop all functions. And if anyone has to do that, tip: do not wear your singlet when you go to weight cut and sweat like that, because your singlet is going to absorb all of the sweat, and now it's still heavy.
Yeah.
So you have to take the singlet off. Like that one kid that was out there, we realized he was wearing a singlet, so we told his coach, "Hey, you should tell him to get his singlet off."
Yeah.
There was a part a little earlier before the hydrate section. I have it here in my notes that I thought was we touched on it a little bit. The main reason most end up on the short end of the stick is in regards to managing their heat and hydration stuff, is that they do not take the time to do what needs to be done when the temperature soars. Um, this is this is a common thing. You know, if it's always amazing to me. We'll have classes and it's maybe not the best weather outside. People don't seem to take notice and bring stuff that could help them. Like, hey, you could have brought, for Memorial Day Murph, suntan lotion. Or if it's a little chilly outside, you could have brought a sweater. Like, these things are allowed in class and you should bring them.
Right.
But people don't seem to put a lot of future thought into, oh, let me bring that. Let me bring a towel. Let me do this. Let me do that. It's always surprising to me that they don't.
Yeah.
So you have to plan. Where are we
Um,
going next?
yeah. So it's probably within the same hydrate section, just a little bit lower. Um, Another thing that jumped out to me, um, yeah, when we're talking about all these different things that people use, like Gatorade, or what really jumped out to me is something like a pre-workout, or he talks about coffee and caffeine. And it's something that I've known, but within this context, it makes it so much more interesting. Uh, that caffeine promotes rapid water loss. So if you're a person, we'll use Mike as an example, who is drinking like 6 cups of coffee.
That's pretty
Um,
light. 6 cups. That's
right.
that's that's amateur day for Mike right there.
But if that's something that you're doing, like loaded up with caffeine, and maybe, these other energy drinks like C4 or Celsius, and how does that affect you in the heat? Maybe it gets you, you know, a little bit more ready to work out, like more pumped, but what is that doing for you with your adaptation to this heat, or, water loss throughout the rest of your workout?
Yeah. Well, I mean, caffeine is a diuretic,
Yeah.
and it's going to cause issues like that. I've met with many people talking about nutrition. It's like, well, how's your hydration? How much water you drink? Things like that. And when they factor in the coffee, they're like, look, I drink a lot. And it's like, no, I wouldn't necessarily count the coffee. I know there's some dissenting opinions on that, like fluid is fluid.
Yeah.
But I think in, let's say, like a Mike example, we're out the extreme now. Like, all right, if you have 1 or 2 cups of coffee a day, cool, count that in. Make sure you're drinking other things as well, like water. But if that's your main thing, if every time you need to wet your whistle, there's now an iced coffee, there's a this, there's a that. I don't know what we're doing here. Like, if you need a milkshake every single time, or a sugary type of thing just to hydrate your body, I feel like that's a deeper issue on what's going on here. I have met many people. I don't know if you've ever met someone who doesn't drink water. Have you ever met someone like that?
Yeah, a couple of people for sure.
Yeah. They're like, I don't like the taste. I'm like, it doesn't taste like anything, or shouldn't taste like anything. It's just water. I know, like, we all have our favorite brand of bottled water, and like it tastes different,
Yeah.
for some reason. But yeah, it's there are people out there that they don't drink water. They only drink soda. They only drink juice and stuff like that. And you have to imagine too how much extra sugar and other
Right.
things that are getting in your body, and you're not getting things like magnesium, potassium, sodium that are going to actually help you. And in the case of, maybe not the case of Mike, I won't use him as an example, but like if you are not hydrating, your heart has to work really, really hard,
Yeah.
right? And I think he talks about that here with what the blood volume dropping and other things, circulation becomes impaired. No wonder it's so much harder to breathe. And then if you factor in the humidity, now it's really hard to breathe. Or just if it's even cold outside, because we can't forget the cold months too. This
Yeah.
happens during the cold months, and there's a masking effect during the months. But your heart has to work so hard, and you're doing a lot more damage than good. Just again, if your body's a car and you've needed an oil change for 10 months, what's going on? What's going on with your engine when it's running on nothing, right? It's
Yeah.
getting damaged. It's not performing optimally. So this is when we start to get into some dangerous stuff. And we have had an incident in the gym. I ever tell you about the the person who had a blood pressure issue at the gym with hydration?
I'm not sure.
Well, I won't use any names, but there was one day where this athlete was warming up in class, and then they left for a second to go to the hallway. And then by the end of the warm up, I noticed they hadn't come back yet. So I just poked my head in the hallway to see where they were. And they were sitting on the bench in the hallway there. And I went over to them. I said, "Hey, how are you doing?" And their eyes were open, but they weren't blinking. And then I'm like, "Hey," I started to get concerned. I put my hand on their shoulder and I'm shaking them. "Hey, all right. Hey, are you okay?" And
Yeah.
then I yelled to someone to call 911. And then they woke up from my shaking and like, oh, what's going on and whatnot. And when the EMTs came, they took this person to the hospital and they said it was a big blood pressure issue. And we found out that this person hadn't drank any water since Saturday. And this was Tuesday. So
Mm.
they hadn't had anything to drink, according to them, since that time. And this is the winter months, and they were skiing on Saturday. And people just don't feel thirsty as often during
Right.
the winter months. And you don't think you need to hydrate and stuff like that. But I just can't even imagine that, like not having anything. But they said they had drank no water since Saturday. So, and that was Tuesday. And they had a huge blood pressure issue and they passed out with their eyes open, which freaked me out
Yeah.
because I thought they died, like, so that was quite the scary scenario. And we were doing before that bear crawls, high butt bear crawls.
Mm.
So you're going to get a blood pressure spike from some of that stuff. And it was just too much. They went in the hallway and passed out. So that was a scary moment for sure. But that just shows how hard your body has to work and it will shut down. Like there are, like it says here, there are different types of illnesses. Some of those are just to get you maybe to stop a little bit, right? Like when you
Yeah.
get a cramp, your body's like, "Nope, Miguel, we are going no further because I have nothing left to give."
Yeah. And going into that, the three separate categories. Um, so there's heat exhaustion, or heat fatigue, heat exhaustion, and heat stroke. I think
Yep.
people definitely know heat stroke, which is, by that point, it's pretty far gone.
Yep.
Again, people are a little bit more familiar with heat exhaustion now, but heat fatigue might be new to some people, and those are like the early signs of what's going on. And
We should read all three of these. I think
yeah,
it's
for sure.
definitely worth it.
Yeah, so let's go through. So heat fatigue sufferers will experience cramps, usually in the legs and abdomen. If these symptoms aren't dealt with right away, uh, and the athlete continues to push himself, the next step is heat exhaustion. This is more
Let's
serious
pause right there.
response. Yeah,
I think the a potential good thing is that when most people get to that point where they're getting cramps in their legs and abdomen, they will stop.
right.
At least in our setting. I think this is now the issue where you have a sports team, there's a lot of pressure, coaches are riding hard, and you don't want to let people down, and then you start to just ignore those things. So you should never ignore those things and you should bring it to the attention of a coach. I think in our setting, if we're in a normal CrossFit class, this is when someone's like, I can't do this. I'm done for
Right.
the day, kind of thing. Which that's a good thing. That's an extremely good thing. You should stop. But there is the risk of, and it could even be in a group exercise class. If you get the right makeup of people in a CrossFit class with the right personalities and no one wants to back down, then I can definitely see that being an issue too. So it just comes down. This is like the communication one. Talk to your coach.
Yep.
It's a 20-minute AMRAP. We're 10 minutes in. This starts to happen to you. You should stop and tell your coach instead of being like, well, I'll just tough it out the rep. No, like, because now, as we're going to talk about, we're going to get on to the next step. And it varies for different people. There's not like a time limit. Like you have 20 minutes left before, you're going to get to the next issue of heat exhaustion.
Yeah. Yeah. So going into that again, when I think of heat exhaustion, again, like you said, I'll think more of like competitions or even like something like the open, where you're doing a workout that is on some type of scoreboard or leaderboard like that, and that's kind of how people will push themselves into that. Um, so the next step is heat exhaustion. This is a more serious response to the heat and results in fatigue, weakness, and collapse. An athlete suffering from heat exhaustion may have the following symptoms: normal temperature, pale, clammy skin, profuse sweating, nausea, headache, and dizziness. And it's always interesting to me. I've actually seen a couple, as the heat has been going on with this heat wave. I've seen a couple like diagrams with the difference between heat exhaustion and heat stroke, in that normal temperature for heat exhaustion is really, I guess, jarring to me. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it can be confusing because you're going through something like heat exhaustion, but your body feels like to the
Fine.
touch of just normal. Like you're feeling dizzy and whatever, but you're
You
not
would think it'd be like a
really
fever. You're like, wow, you're
right.
burning up.
Um, but yeah, and
I
then
know.
finally, heat stroke
I
is
I think that if you remember that Friday when I messaged all you guys and I said I'm not feeling too well, right before I left for Nationals week, it was that Friday. Um, I think I might have had an issue like this because,
hmm,
like, reading it, I'm like, hey, that's how I felt.
yeah,
Initially, I thought maybe it was like some food poisoning type thing because that the night before I had gotten some Texas Roadhouse, had a nice sweet potato, had a nice steak. I didn't feel like cooking that night, but the more I think about it, I've mentioned this potentially to you and in class of trying to get through the summer without turning on my air conditioner. And I did that for a large portion of last summer. And I think as this heat wave was coming, I just it didn't register that it was so bad in here. But I'm on the top floor in this old building that's like made of old materials and everything. And it gets crazy hot in here.
yeah,
And I just you don't realize it. Like you're here, it's 9 a.m. It's not that bad, but then it starts to climb and you don't it's almost like the frog in the pot
mm,
where you start to boil the water and the frog doesn't hop out because the increase of danger and the heat is so gradual that it just starts to get acclimated and doesn't
yeah,
realize it. So I think that's a little bit what's happening to me, where I was having this like brain fog and I felt dizzy and nauseous and a little clammy, and I thought I was getting sick. And I'm like, great, I'm getting sick before I have to go on this big important trip. But then the next day, I was fine. I was like, well, what in the world was that? And of course, I started slamming Element and all this other things, and went outside to my balcony. Just 5 feet to my left, I can go outside and be like, oh, I feel great, right?
yeah,
And it's amazing too. It's like if I'm a frog in the pot and I'm boiling, I could just go over there and be fine. But you don't think to go over there,
right,
like your your brain thing. Like I flooded my apartment because I had a brain fart on the dishwasher. I
mm,
ran out of dish pods, and instead of going to get more, I decided just to use the detergent soap. Don't don't do that. Don't do that because all of a sudden the suds started to come from
yeah,
around all the sides of the door. That was awful. Cleaning all that up, but like I just wasn't thinking. I just could not think. I'm like, whoa. And it got to the point where I couldn't think well enough that I'm like, I don't feel like it's right for me to go drive right now. And
Hmm.
I also don't feel comfortable being in front of a group of people telling them what to do. I just can't think today. I don't know what's happening. I feel
Yeah.
so off. And I think that this was a little bit of this. I've cleaned my air conditioner and I've popped it on a couple times now. So,
Mm. Yeah.
but I think that's what was going on. Like this is a recent thing of, it could have gotten worse,
Yeah.
thankfully it didn't.
Um, so last one, heat stroke. Heat stroke represents the most serious heat illness because it can end in death. Every year, we all read reports of athletes, usually football players, taking part in two-a-days, who died from heat stroke. The symptoms include high body temperature, hot, red, and dry skin, rapid, strong pulses, and in most cases, unconsciousness. So, yeah, this is again, you have to get through these other stages to get to heat stroke. But
Yep.
like we were talking about, it's the gradual kind of you get there after a long session. You've been doing stuff all day, and slowly and slowly it builds and builds.
And imagine you're doing double days. You're up the night before, maybe you were even out partying, right? Drinking
Right.
alcohol.
Yeah, it is summer, and yeah, a lot of these training sessions happen when you start to get back with your buddies, and
Yeah.
afterwards people want to do a bunch of stuff too. So yeah.
So you're coming in already depleted. You get some coffee to wake you up. You're taking pre-workout energy. So now, like with that stuff too, your heart's working,
Yeah.
and then your heart's working while you're doing the exercise or the sport. And then now with all this heat stuff and not enough fluids, we're in a precarious situation here. And he says it right there, that last little sentence, all are preventable, period. Like that's a very powerful sentence right there, that it's all preventable. Like I could have gone outside and gotten some fresh air and cooled down. Instead I stayed inside and put an ice pack on my back, but I'm still in the pot. I didn't turn on the fan, Miguel. I'm
Right.
still in the boiling hot water. But at some point you just can't even think about it. You almost need another person to tell you, get out. Like, what are you doing right now? Because you stop thinking about it.
Hmm.
I do like how he says up there underneath the photo, Bill Starr recommends drinking more than 6 ounces of every water for every 20 minutes of activity in warm weather. When I first came to Albany CrossFit for my internship in 2011, during that summer, I did a little experiment at the gym where we had a scale and I wrote your name on the board and then a before and after. And I had people get on the scale to measure their body weight. So we wrote down your body weight. And then after the Metcon on a hot day, we remeasured. And some people, the weight loss was anywhere from a pound to 3 pounds
Hmm.
difference. And this is still with wearing the clothes that got sweaty, but of course the shirts came off for some people. That was more of a shirts off type of crowd, anyways,
Yeah.
back in those days. But the it was so you need to not only be hydrating beforehand and during, but then after the workout, you need to replace this. And I remember back at SUNY Cortland, I don't know if this is still the recommendation. I'm a little not studied up on some of this stuff, but it was for every pound that you lost, drink 16 ounces, or it might have been double that. And so I did that little experiment just to show people, well, hey, you should of course throughout the rest of the day take in, if you lost a pound, drink a water bottle, and then also continue to drink during the rest of the day.
Yeah.
So that was a cool experiment. That would be interesting to do for us in barbell clubs sometimes when it gets really hot, to have you guys hop on a scale and see what we are at after at the
Yeah.
end of the session in August. But you can do that for yourself, right? Come to the gym, hop on the scale in the locker room. Before you leave, hop on a scale, be like, ooh, wow, we did a lot that day. And it's
Yeah.
not actual body weight loss. Like, you're not like, ooh, I'm lighter. Like, you need to replace this type of stuff.
Definitely.
All right, where are we going next?
So I mean, he gets into his own training and how he's kind of had experiences with heat for the rest of the article. But two probably big. Well, I noted three things. One's kind of funny, um, but
Oh, I like that real quick. You
yeah,
can't control the heat, but you can control the minerals and fluids you pre-ingest and post in pre-work, or you ingest pre-workout and post-workout.
right. Yeah, in this section, he kind of goes into like salt tablets and his use with that, and we use the element, of course,
Yep.
um, but
This is
something
a
like
great
that,
time to put it out there. Element, we need a sponsor for the show.
right?
I have a group of weightlifters that like we're surviving on the Element brand. Like that's that's what's getting us through our training. So yeah, Element, reach out to us. So we'll send this episode to them. We need help. All across the Barbell Club needs a sponsor. Also,
um,
Sour Patch Kids. If we could have another
yeah,
sponsor.
that would be great. That would be great. Um, yeah, so something like element, just to help. Sometimes water by itself isn't exactly enough to to hold throughout a hard training session or just throughout the day. As the water gets flushed out, just adding in more water isn't always exactly everything that you need.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's kind of been on my mind. I didn't know when the first part to put this in there, especially you as a coach starting to work with more athletes. Maybe in the future you open your own gym, something like that, right? The When you start to get people to change their lifestyle, good things that we need can also get put out of it, and then that can cause problems, like especially when people back in the day everybody was going paleo. Well, a lot of processed foods of course are getting taken off the table, but salt used to be really vilified,
Hmm.
and really the type of salt matters, and how you're getting your sodium matters. Like of course like a processed prepackaged pizza is going to have a lot of sodium in it that's not really good for you, but you can get like nice salts to season your meats and stuff with. But a lot of people who used to go paleo and start to eat very clean also threw the salt out.
Yeah,
They threw that baby out with the bathwater, and then they would start eating really clean and coming to CrossFit 4 or 5 times a week, and it's hot out and they're sweating, and then they're just hitting a wall or having really big issues or cramping a lot, and it's because they're trying to make these healthy lifestyle choices, but we're missing these little building blocks to help us going. And it's just a thing that happens when people start to try to quote eat clean.
yeah,
It they view salt and sodium as unclean because of what's been out there on how it's bad for you. You don't want too much sodium, things like that. Which, of course, that is true to a certain point. It's the type and how you get it, which is important. But that's something to keep an eye on with your athletes. Oh, great! All right, we're going to cut for a competition. We're going to start to eat clean to lose weight or do this or that. Let's also have the sodium um, conversation with the hydration, because you'll get someone too, they start coming in with their gallon of water every
yeah,
day, right? And they're doing exactly what you're saying they're doing. They're just flushing everything out and not holding on to stuff. I've done that before. I don't know if you've ever done it. I did it where you're walking around with a gallon of water and you're like, wow, I never knew what it was like to have to pee 17 times in a day.
right, right,
This is
yeah.
really enjoyable. you know
If you remember when I was getting drug tested at the Arnold, um, trying to like get going, I just started drinking a bunch of water, and they had to kind of tell me to like stop that because it kind of messes with the sample because it just flushes, it takes everything out.
oh,
um,
really?
yeah, so they were like, you actually need, like, they had like the special electrolyte kind of Gatorade in the back, and different fluids, um, because yeah, they were saying that the water itself might just knock everything out. Like you kind of need that
That's
stuff within your body still.
Hey, that's a good trick, if anyone's looking to
Yeah,
to pass anything up your hydration game. I actually didn't know that. And hey, we passed that drug test legitimately.
right. Yeah,
We're a clean athlete. We're a hydrated athlete.
yeah,
The the whole Gatorade thing too is interesting. Do you remember when people were dying from drinking only Gatorade?
yeah, yeah,
And it's like, one, I feel like the recreational athlete definitely doesn't need that. It's sugar water, you know.
Mhm.
It's like we knew this back in 2011 and before, or 2010, whenever I was in sports and physiology nutrition class, and my professor back then had a huge vendetta against Gatorade.
Yeah,
Um, because of this, he's like, it's just sugar water. It's not doing anything for you. But what you should do are like the tablets and stuff like that, and also eating a balanced diet helps you to get all of that stuff in, all the
right.
minerals, vitamins. But yeah, there was a huge problem with people dying because they were just drinking Gatorade, and the claims that Gatorade was making were false. You know?
I actually, right around the time I was probably doing freshman football, Gatorade had a very big rebrand. I don't know if anyone will remember this, but they had, I think, 3 stages. So there was kind of like a pre-game Gatorade that you would drink, and they were numbered. Like number one, number two was like
Oh, I don't remember
during
this.
during the game, and then I think three was like almost a protein type of drink. Still like Gatorade, so not like a protein shake per se, but it was like to replenish you. And yeah, I remember during that time, all anybody was drinking was Gatorade. Like it was such a huge rebrand, and I remember I had a huge Gatorade kick as well during this time, but I've completely gone the other way now where I think really all I drink is water. I don't think I really drink anything else for hydration. Maybe like element thrown in there every now and then, but yeah, it's mostly water because I had such a big Gatorade phase that I'm like, oh no, this is actually kind of bad.
Yeah, but more than likely, when all that was going on, I'd already been past the point of, oh, Gatorade's the devil. I just won't deal with it. And yeah, I don't drink any of that stuff. But I remember in high school and early college when I was doing a lot of tennis, yeah, we would go to the gas station and get a Gatorade or a Powerade or one of those things, you know.
Yeah,
And now I could never even imagine drinking one. Like it would probably taste so bad, or so
yeah,
like chemically. And I would just prefer to have the element. And recently, I don't know why it took me so long to do this. I have like a lemonade pitcher or iced tea pitcher,
hmm,
and I was like, I should just fill that up with water and put 1 or 2 packs of element in there. And when I want like something like a flavory drink, just pour that out. And that's
yeah,
been super, like, one, it's helped me stretch my element and just even with 2 packs in there. And when I want something to drink, I don't have to commit to my full water bottle. I can
yeah,
just pour a little glass of element and drink that.
hmm,
And so that's been nice on like these hotter days when like sometimes it's hot and you're like, I want something, right? And that's maybe your body telling you, hey, I need something. And it's funny how your brain always goes to sugary drink
yeah,
or lemonade or something like that. And now I just pour myself a glass of nice cold lemonade or element
yeah,
lemonade, and it works.
hmm,
So I can easily make that commercial for you, Element, and we can put it on social media, and we'll sell many many sticks and drinks. We just need a sponsor here on the show.
yeah,
But yeah, I definitely recommend doing that. Make yourself a pitcher of Element and have it just live in the fridge.
yeah,
I
yeah,
also do that when cravings pop up. Like normally at night, I'm like, man, I really wish I would have gone to the store and got something. Right? I just get the Element and slow sip that, and I'm like, that worked. That
yeah.
that that was my snack for tonight. Was a glass of
Hmm.
Element. Let's see here. I'm not scrolled down yet to I think where we were going to. The scrolling is a little bit slow, as you can
Yeah,
see. I'm actually trying to scroll, but it's taking its time. I like
yeah.
how he
I'm
has
not.
this quote here. I called them 3 t-shirt facilities. So like he'd bring 3 t-shirts to work out and sweat through all of them.
Yeah, yeah. That's kind of crazy. I couldn't imagine.
I do like how earlier in the article he said that skipping training wasn't an option. So I was happy
Yeah,
about
that
that.
was actually a cool piece for me of like doing this like research on heat training. As you know, I'm very anti-fan when we train,
Yep.
because in my head, there was something to gain significantly from training in these hotter conditions. Um, and all research has shown, I mean, there are some benefits, but it's not as significant as you would think. And it's even more dangerous to not, you know, to have the resource of a fan and then not use it. Um, so unfortunately, this has kind of swayed me to be a fan person, I guess, when we're training now.
Well, it's also interesting. Like, its mere presence in the room commands that it kind of comes on some days.
Right.
Like, if you look at the CrossFit side of things, for 10, 15 years, we didn't have a fan. Yet all of a sudden, there's a fan next door in the double for the barbell club, and people are losing their minds next door, begging for the fan. And it's like, we never had a fan. Like, what are you talking about? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But all of a sudden, they're like, oh, we need that fan, and we can't survive without it. I waffle on it. I feel like I'm more sympathetic to the barbell club side of things because our room doesn't have a lot of ventilation or circulation of air,
Yeah.
period, versus the CrossFit side does. And I don't know, for some reason, there's this thing in my head. I'm like, the CrossFit side should be tougher. I don't know.
I mean, once you open the garage door as well, it's just circulation is really what it is. It's just the
Yeah,
air needs to move.
I do think that there's a value of like just be uncomfortable and sit with it, you know, and grow from it, as opposed to you know hitting the emergency brakes and going
Right.
for the thing that feels good. So I understand your anti-fanness. I'm that's my side of it. On like, well, maybe it's okay to be uncomfortable today.
Right.
It's this is a grander conversation of then and now. It used to be if it was raining out, no one said anything. We were
Mm.
running. And now it's like people look outside, oh, I don't want to get wet, And it's like, well, so what? Like
Yeah.
and so there's a thing going on there. I don't know. It's still the same people. Human beings haven't changed that much. Maybe it's the type of people and the goals. People were more fire breathers back in the day, and they were more. It didn't matter. I was going to do burpees on that pavement. And I don't care if there's gravel on me or whatnot. But now people care a little more. I don't know. I don't know if it's because there's things out there like Orange Theory that are a little more cushiony, you know,
Hmm.
and people expect CrossFit to be the same way. But I think CrossFit has a lot of valuableness to it on being gritty too.
Yeah. 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 And that's what I did take away from this is that the gain from training in such heat conditions is really psychological. That's a huge piece of it because as it gets hot and summer goes on and you know it's a really nice day out, do I really want to train today? And as people are, as you can say, losing days throughout the summer, maybe because it's too hot, it's too uncomfortable, if you continue your training, that's kind of where you get the step up on them,
Yeah.
is where if we didn't have a fan, would some people go to training less because it's completely uncomfortable? And who are the people that will come in and who are the people that won't? And how will that build throughout time?
Well, in the pre-fan training days, at the 2015 AWF National Championships in Woburn, Massachusetts, it was held at CrossFit Lando, and that place was a sauna. It was just a big block gym, and there were fans over in the spectator area, but not in the warm up room.
Mm.
And like I was sweating down my back on my singlet, and everybody you could see like there were flustered faces. Everybody was like so uncomfortable, and I was like, it is what it is. Like I was fine with it. And I had an okay performance. I hit some lifts that I wanted to hit that day, but outside of that, like everybody was like complaining about the heat, and I was just like, this is just what we got to do. Like,
Right.
like I feel like my mindset on it was different. I'm not going to complain right now. I have to snatch. Like, so what if it's hot? We'll live. And I'd already been to so many gyms for like seminars or just in our gym where it's just hot and it's sweaty, but you're still doing your training anyways, you know. And you don't want to be in a situation where something pops up, you can't handle it, and now you can't perform, you
Yeah.
know. It's kind of like the not entirely because that fight went different ways, but if we look at Rocky 4, Rocky's out there training in the snow. He's out there lifting up carts and chains and rocks. And then you've got Drago, who's in the nice air conditioned, you know, scientific gym and whatnot. Like you can get a lot of great training done in not the fancy air conditioned, cool conditions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Rocky had that grit. He had to get that grit to beat Drago.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Go back to
I
Rocky.
mean, it kind of segues into the other articles that I was kind of reading into, and acclimation as well. It's
You want me to
still,
pop there?
um you don't necessarily need to. I'm not even sure where in the article it falls really, but um yeah, with acclimation, it's very dependent on similar conditions. So let's say if we knew, I mean, States is going to be held at a wonderful facility that will be good temperature. But let's say we knew we were going to a gym that didn't have air conditioning. We knew it was going to be muggy there when we were competing. The heat acclimatization or acclimation would be, as you can see there, like 1 to 2 weeks it can typically take. If we knew that those were the conditions that we were going to be competing in,
We wouldn't turn on the fan for 1 to 2 weeks.
right, it would be let's train in a similar type of climate for this time, and we'll be better suited. Or as you, it's like it's kind of home field advantage as well. If you're the person who constantly trains in that gym and competition day comes around, you'll feel no different.
Yeah.
Same thing as if we acclimatized ourselves by kind of training in similar uh, kind of temperatures or climate that kind of mirrored that, versus somebody who, came from a very, like we're saying, like a cushy type of air conditioned, had the best barbells, everything. Um, and then they go to a place that maybe doesn't have all of these things, and you can feel it wearing on you during that time, if
Yeah.
you're not acclimatized to it.
I remember there was years ago, Frank went to drop in at a gym. I want to say probably down in Florida. I think he was on one of his vacations down in Florida, and the bar he had to use was just a rusted piece of metal, you
Hmm.
know. And I believe he still hit a PR on that, whether it was from the low hang or some kind of clean and jerk PR. I want to say I could be wrong, but he was still able to make it happen on that. And leading up to that and beyond that, you know, Frank has his own bar at his gym, but he can get it done on any bar. You know, it
Right.
doesn't matter. That's not going to throw him. It's going to, you know, he's confident in his strength and his technique, and he's going to put the effort on it. You know, it's a bad thing when you see lifters that like, oh, all they got are these CrossFit bars,
Hmm.
and you're not even snatching 60 kilos. It's like, or body weight. It's like, come on now. Like, do you really need that? Like, for many years, for 7 years of us being a barbell club, we didn't have kilo plates. You guys are just surviving on the CrossFit bars and pound plates.
Yeah.
And with those pound plates, you know, they're old. Who knows how many of them were actually 45 pounds and
Yeah.
not a little off here, a little off there, you know, which that throws off the rhythm of your lift if it's not a nice calibrated plate. And you guys didn't have personal bars. Like right now, we have that stuff. And I think it's great we have that stuff. But if we had to go a week of using just pound plates, I think we'd be fine. I think we still have that base in our training. And you just did it recently at a gym, right?
Right. So at CrossFit DC, they did have kilo plates. Um, it was just more convenient for me to use pound plates, and the way that I was training, um, it was just easier for pound plates, and it felt fine, honestly. And it's kind of you kind of just have to forget about it. I mean,
Yeah.
I even did the thing. The bars were also great bars. Like I was telling you guys, even though they were just regular bars, they weren't my bar that I use specifically. Um, but yeah, just kind of getting used to it. Same thing with, I ran there in the DC heat. I
Oh
was
God.
wearing my regular CrossFit trainers, not my weightlifting shoes. Um, and yeah, it was 95 degrees, uh, just training as best as you can. And it's you kind of just have to push past some of this stuff.
I would have ran there and Ubered back.
Yeah, I definitely got stopped at a cafe, had a long breakfast afterwards before running back to the Airbnb.
Post workout meal.
Yeah.
But so yeah, there's definitely a risk to your training, of course, on getting too comfortable. Your spot, your bar, your this, your that, your time. Um, I think the more we can get uncomfortable here and there within reason, it definitely helps. And when it's hot and stuff, I think those of you I've noticed with a CrossFit background seem to do better when things get a little bit more inconvenient or uncomfortable than those who don't. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that.
Just because you guys have done so many, like you've ran in the rain, burpees on the parking lot, hot temperatures, super sweaty, uh, like you guys have just experienced just things that they're not like they're not polished. It's a little
Yeah.
grittier. So I think there's a big value to that. And that's why I like when we do our strongman training, where it's like, yeah, it's dirty and it's awkward and it's difficult and it's uncomfortable. Yeah, let's do that.
Right.
It's not the only reason we do it, but that's part of it. Um, on these key points here, we can you already touched upon generally it's about 1 to 2 weeks, 90 minutes a day for the heat exposure. But for people to acclimate. I think there's some other good points in here. I'll read this one here. The biological adaptations include integrated thermoregulatory, cardiovascular, fluid electrolyte, metabolic, and molecular responses. So it's not only can that stuff be negatively impacted if you're not fueling your body the right way with minerals and vitamins and hydration, but it can also be improved with the heat if you're doing that stuff,
Yeah.
right?
If you're doing it consistently the correct way, your body's response will get better with the heat over time. So it's really not about shying away from the heat. In fact, you just need to be doing the right things in the heat, and your body will start to be better with dealing with it. And part of that is like sweating earlier, and sweat is a good thing. Obviously, it cools down our body. Um, but through acclimation, you know, whereas it might take someone, they might get halfway through their workout and they start sweating, even though it's extremely hot. It's better for you to be sweating at the beginning of your warm up, because that's warming your body up. It's getting everything moving the way it should be, but then the sweat is also cooling you down quicker and in a more efficient way, so that you're, you know, not dying by the end of it all.
Yeah. Um, this one says the heat acclimation occurs when repeated exercise heat exposures are sufficiently stressful to invoke profuse sweating and elevated whole body temperatures. So and it doesn't have to be just working out in a hot gym. A lot of people go into sauna to do this too,
Yeah.
to recover. That was one of the things where you know being injured and not being able to do things often, and also some other health issues I was having. I was noticing that I wasn't really sweating at all, period. Like we'd be in the hot gym doing stuff, and I'm like, even just like hanging out here and coaching class, I'm like not sweating like I used to.
Hmm.
So I started going to the local place that had a sauna, and when they closed down, I got one of those little mini pods for my house here, and to teach my body to sweat again.
Yeah.
And that helps a lot. And now, like, if I go outside, all right, now we're sweating,
Hmm.
but like I don't want to be in a situation where like it's just not happening. So you can teach your body to do that stuff, and the sauna is a great way to do that.
Right.
Let's see, anything else here?
No, I mean, it's essentially all saying basically the same thing. Um, I guess if we can like wrap and kind of summarize it all. Um,
What was this one?
that was similar. This was specifically about runners, and they also talked about using saunas as well. Um, with this article, they kind of talked about how if you're going to be getting athletes ready for certain heat conditions and you're acclimatizing them that way, you may have to take a little bit out of their training because the heat is an added stressor. Um, and you have to expect as you add in stressors to an athlete's load that kind of something has to give there.
Yeah.
So if you want to make the most out of it, maybe their overall training intensity goes down a little bit, but you're adding in the added benefit of them being better acclimatized to the heat. Um, like you see there, that first protocol, um, they use like saunas and hot baths as well for like if you're a runner. All right, let's say we don't necessarily have to go out and run in the desert today, but
Yeah.
after your training, a good way to get ready for that heat is to hit the sauna afterwards. It's a good way to get your body used to heat and um, sweating the way that we want, but it also eases the muscles. It's not more stressors added and more strain.
I think there's valuable things too when you're in the sauna on working on your breathing when you're in like a really hot sauna. I've been in some saunas where I had to get out. It's like I just don't even feel like I can breathe anymore. It's just like it all gets to you, and you're like,
Yeah,
I'm out. Like, but like just being in there and just like working on your nasal breathing and how to control your breath when you feel hot and uncomfortable is another valuable skill that you can do in a sauna situation. That'll help you if, let's say, you're going out for a run and it's a hot day. You can start to like regulate your breathing as
yeah,
opposed to gasping for air if it's maybe a little muggy or humid out.
yeah,
I'll go back to the. I'll put the links for all three of these articles in the show notes. Um, I do like this last little part on where he's talking about the supplement
yeah.
regulations and the nutrition. Let's read this here. Uh, I'll get us started. So this is Bill Starr talking about what he would do. He said, first, I'll go over what supplements you need to take in hot weather to allow you to get in a productive session, and then I'll provide some tips on programming, which he also talked about backing off the training a little bit and doing more low impact exercises.
Yeah.
Like, okay, maybe you're gonna finish your session with some dumbbell presses or things, dumbbell rows, or it could just even be, all right, instead of doing 5x5 back squat today, we're going to do 3x5. We're going to, instead of use 80% or 85%, we'll go with 70 or 75%. Just back it off a little bit, knowing that the heat is going to play an issue. And
Yeah.
that's something that we can always do. Let's say you come in one day and you're like, all right, our snatches are supposed to be at 88%, or that's the percentage we're up to. And he's like, I don't got it today. I didn't eat, I didn't hydrate. I feel like that should be regulated, instead of us. I know a lot of times you guys want to try, right?
Yeah.
Like, well, let me see if I can get there. What I thought about doing is on our athlete card, um, where you can kind of have a bar under each section where you rate on a scale of 1 to 10 how that session went. So if you made all your lifts and you're like John or Jennifer and you did 8 sets instead of 5 sets, that's a 10,
Right.
you know? But maybe if we have like one of your days where the jerk is just not happening that day and we're feeling beat up and it's like a 4, well, that could help me now figure out what the appropriate jump is next week, or just repeat these weights or go up a kilo instead of 3 or whatever the percentage is going to be.
Yeah.
But also, I feel like it'd be better if we had a regulatory thing where if you put down your ratings, you're like, okay, this rating means I should probably not be at this percentage today.
Yeah.
Like, I need to scale this down. Um, that's probably a whole nother conversation, but that is something that I would like to build into the card somehow. One, to help me to plan the next week, because most of the time the card just says you did it, right?
Yeah.
Even if you did all the sets. But it'd be good if I had a rating thing there where you're like, yeah, I got all my squats done, but I was fighting for my life.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
always know that looking at the card, but also a way where you guys can learn to auto regulate the programming, whether I'm there or whether I'm not, where it's like, all right, you don't have to keep marching forward. What you're going to do is you're going to turn that last warm up into working sets,
Mhm.
or you're going to bump it down by this percentage and then do that for working sets. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That is something I would like to get us doing here eventually. Maybe that'd be something for the new training cycle going into states. Okay. So most people are well aware of the importance of drinking lots of water in hot weather, but few understand water alone is not enough. We've talked about that. In fact, drinking high volumes of water can actually create nutritional deficiencies. Whether you're sweating profusely or gulping down lots of water, you're rapidly flushing the water soluble minerals out of your body, specifically the B vitamins and vitamin C and all the minerals. Without an adequate supply of these vitamins and minerals, your body cannot function properly. That is the gulping down lots of water when people are trying to like. Then you get that water sitting in your belly.
Yeah.
That's also another mistake that people make. And then you end up throwing up water.
Yeah.
That's never fun.
Yep.
I've done that before. Um, most important are the minerals. Life itself depends on minerals. There are over 60 trillion cells in your body, and every one needs a wide variety of minerals. Every cell is composed of 5% minerals. They are what propel and perpetuate the various metabolic responses, as well as provide structure and support for the cells. We've touched on this. When they're not supplied in adequate amounts, muscles cannot contract maximally, and there is a general feeling of fatigue. That's really important for us as weightlifters on that contraction potential. Early warning signs you are deficient in minerals include cramps, muscle tremors, lightheadedness, extreme tiredness. Yes. The other two water soluble vitamins are also essential for a solid workout. The B's help convert the foods you eat and drink into energy, so they're extremely valuable to anyone trying to get stronger. Vitamin C helps recovery and rebuild. Of course, both are doing a great deal in this, but a brief description is sufficient for the purpose of this article. And then he has his main point. My point: if you want to have good training sessions, make sure that you take a generous amount of these water soluble vitamins and minerals throughout your workout, especially the minerals. Take all the minerals together rather than separately. Then he goes into an explanation of that. There is Dan Bailey. They work together in a synergistic fashion. How many tablets should you take? It depends on how hot it is. Okay, so he's going into more nutritional things. Uh, what I really wanted to talk about was his protein shakes.
Hmm.
What do you think about this up here, the simple shake?
Yeah. It was interesting because when he was talking about protein shakes as like kind of a solution, um, he talked about heat and appetite, which I really felt last week while I was in DC. I It's interesting being an athlete and knowing certain things about your body, no matter how it kind of feels in your head. I had no appetite when I was there, and it was 100% due to the heat. And I was doing so much more walking. Um, from my Airbnb, I ran to the gym, I ran back, I was going to friends' places, I was walking there 20, 30-minute walks and in that heat. And I knew I didn't feel hungry, but I knew, especially because of the heat, everything that I was expending throughout the day. So I knew that I had to get food in some way. And yeah, he says that the protein shake really helps because, you lose that appetite. And if you want to just get something down that like is filling and can get you what you need, the protein shake really helps.
Yeah, and it's like you get hydration from the foods you eat too. Like the water comes in not just glass form, like everything has moisture to it.
Yeah.
And then you also get those minerals and vitamins, and you need all that stuff. You like, again, you just have to put gas in the tank. And it's easy when it's hot out to be like, yeah, I don't feel like eating either.
Hmm.
Like, yeah, especially like if you think about what most people eat, maybe a hot meal isn't appetizing at the moment because of how hot it is outside. Or if you're going to have some hot, greasy thing, you already feel greasy and sweaty and whatnot, and that's just going to add to it. Um, so a shake could go a long way. And I like his simple shake here. This is definitely someone coming from like, you know, back in the day.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if I've seen these packets he's talking about. I want to
Yeah.
go to
No,
him
I
for
have not.
I don't even know what aisle this would be in. I'm assuming the baking aisle or something. But he says, if the cost of commercial brands of protein powder is keeping you from making shakes, do what I do: buy dry milk solids. I want to try to find them. I'm not going to buy them, but I'll try to find them. They can be found at the grocery store and cost a quarter of the price of the products at health food stores. A carton of packets lasts me 6 weeks and runs right around $10. The formula that I use is this: a half or a full packet of dried milk, 8 ounces of whole milk, a half cup of blueberry yogurt, and some ice cream. I'm assuming vanilla ice cream in this situation. Sherbet works best, or it also works. Is that how you say that? Sherbet? Sherbet?
I think it's just sherbet. Yeah.
Sherbet? Okay. I don't eat that at all. Like I
Yeah.
very few times have I ever had that. I'm going ice cream every time. Um, Don't throw in anything else like fruit. It makes the shake too thick. I'm fine with thicker shake. They need to go down easily. One right after you finish your workout, and another at bedtime will provide you with right at 100 grams of high quality, easily assimilated protein, and they will do wonders to help you maintain your body weight and recover from your workouts. We've been talking a lot about hydration. Another The other part of the coin here is the food part, and how common it is for athletes trying to perform at a high level not eating enough food
Yeah.
and not understanding what enough food is. Like, this is 100 grams right here. you know this is just covering some bases, and doing that right before you go to bed, I bet it's like having a glass of milk before you go to bed. I bet you sleep pretty good
Yeah.
doing this. And I have noticed, when my protein is up pretty high, I sleep better. Like, the protein helps with a lot of stuff
Hmm.
once you start eating enough protein. I've had a lot of people tell me that too, when we start talking about macros and they realize how much they're under eating, especially on the protein part. Then once they get that protein up, they do start to feel like they sleep better because it helps with your nerve cells and your nervous system. Like, everybody needs everything. Everything in your body is screaming out, "Hey, I would also like some of that protein. Those
Yeah.
carbs, bring them over here." And when you're under eating, again, it's all spread very, very thin to do stuff. So eating enough food is definitely important. That shake sounds good. Protein shakes, several a day. Drink one as soon as possible. So yeah, and then bedtime. Yes. Anything else in here that we're missing?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I think yeah, he pretty much wraps up, recaps.
Yep. Bringing down the training, things like that. It's cool seeing all of the games athletes from years past in
Right.
these articles. This is Telena Fortunato, right? Is
Yeah, I believe so.
that her? There's no need for a lengthy warm up in hot weather. You're already warm.
I also did write that down.
Because Now, all right. I'm sure he doesn't mean if we're starting at 80%, do one snatch and then jump to 80%. I'm sure he means like the general warm up, right?
Well, up for interpretation.
Up for interpretation. Uh, let's see here, mentioning, and then all right, he's talking about his training, and then just train smart. Extra t-shirts, vitamin D, vitamin B, get that protein in, and just be smart about it. Miguel, any final thoughts on the article or the topic training with the heat?
Yeah, I'd say essentially just to wrap it up with athletes as we go into these hotter months, myself included, just be conscious of your body. There will be signs as you go through this heat. Your body's going to, react the way that it's being treated. So um, just pay attention to things like your hydration, make sure you're eating enough, getting what you need in prior to even getting to the gym. Like we said, it starts when you wake up. So um, really take the correct steps every day and as you go throughout your day so that your training can, still be beneficial to you.
I agree. I would say you cannot cheat the process, and you are not smarter than your body and the processes that are already set into it. And I know there's like that mind body connection thing. And sometimes the mind, maybe more so the ego, overtakes. Oh, I can get through it. No, no, no. I'm different. I can survive on this.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, one, that's people have died with that thought process. And not just in this regard, but I'm sure in many different activities all throughout history. But you are not smarter. And you just like that delayed thirst process. Oh, I'm thirsty now. Yeah, this has been a problem for a while now, and your body is finally getting through to your brain to tell you it's a problem.
Yeah.
Not that, but you'll hear people that I know my body, Miguel. I can sense all these things. I have ultimate awareness, and it's like, all right, like people like don't have situational awareness in many stressful situations. You know, people get robbed. They don't see someone stalking them, things like that. So it's like, of course, you're maybe not going to have the best situational awareness of what's going on internally. Everybody takes things of what's happening right now in front of them up front. That's how we deal with things a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So if you just prepare in advance, then you'll be fine. And then I think you'll have an easier time reading the signs, and it'll be more off of you'll notice things being off sooner because it's outside of your routine of preparedness than noticing things are off when you're at the point of no return. And because that's when we realize things when we're at the point of return. There's too much water in the boat. We're already going down.
Right.
You're not going to fix it by gulping water right now and all of a sudden be magically hydrated. Or carb load before the race by eating a lot of pasta and then go run the race. It's like, remember that used to be a thing. I hope that's not a thing anymore, but people used to do that. I've done that before. I remember back when I used to run a lot, come home from school and be like, all right, I got to get nutrients in me to fuel the activity right now. So you have a couple bowls of Cocoa Puffs cereal, or at least that's what I did back then, and then go out and run. And like, this was a giant mistake and didn't help with anything, and I feel awful. But these are the things that you do when you don't know anything and you're in high school and you're just trying to exercise and get fit. And that's what all the articles are saying to do, stuff like that at the time. Maybe not Cocoa Puffs in general, but just like carb loading and fueling for the activity right now. But people weren't really talking a lot about fueling for the activity the days leading up to it.
Yeah.
And that includes, like for us, for Barbell Club, we meet Monday, Wednesday, Friday. What are you doing on Tuesday and Thursday?
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing on Saturday and Sunday? All of those things matter and factor in. Recently, Mike, we talk about Mike a lot. We got to get Mike on here one of these times when we're all on and get Mike on live. But he's been saying, he was feeling not the greatest on Monday, and then he's also joking around about the drinks on Saturday night
Mm.
and or Friday night. And it's like, yeah, it's going to still affect you many days past that.
Right.
Alcohol is a poison. I'm sorry, whoever didn't know that. You're not putting in anything of nutritional value into your body. Like we're just doing this thing. So of course it's going to take your body time to recover from that. So yeah, do the work in advance and understand that you are not smarter than your body or the processes, and you can't necessarily feel them on a dime. There is no when the check engine light comes on, it's too late.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, this is a fun topic. Good find on the article here, uh, and it's nice to base things around current experiences. Miguel, if you don't have anything else, where can people follow you?
Yeah. Finally got it up on the screen now. At Couldn't Be Miguel on Instagram. That's where I'm at.
Awesome. Isn't that cool? We can have little things there.
Yeah.
Yeah, follow me, James A. McDermott. Follow Albany CrossFit Barbell Club. Follow Albany CrossFit. Follow the Barbell Strikes Back. There's too many Instagram accounts. There's too much Instagram. Follow us if you'd like. If you have any questions, send us a DM through one of those channels or here on YouTube. Thank you so much for listening. Miguel, thank you for another great conversation.
Yeah. Thank you.